Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to join us. We're expecting a number more people, so we'll give everyone some time to get connected this evening before we get started. Thanks again for taking the time out of your day. Hello to everyone who is just trickling in. We'll give everyone a minute or two here to connect this evening before we get started. Alrighty, we'll give everyone one more minute and then we'll jump right in. All right, so it is a few minutes past, so we'll get started, and certainly if folks are still trickling in, there'll be an opportunity to catch up, and we'll just get going with some housekeeping items. So welcome again, and thanks so much for taking the time out of your evening to join us for this community conversation that we're having about the official plan review that's going on in the municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc. If you've been involved in this project over the past few months, we've evolved a significant amount of work since we've last spoke. And if you're new to the project, we're glad you're able to join us, and we'll sort of provide an overview of where we've been and where we're going in this really important and comprehensive project that the municipality is undertaking. Just a few housekeeping items for those who are on, or for those who may be not familiar with Zoom. We do ask that you remain muted until called upon during the Q&A, and certainly you'll have the chance to do so at that point. If you're experiencing any connection issues, like I was earlier today, we recommend you can turn off your camera. That might help with your connection. Throughout the presentation, the chat box should be open and you can type your question or comment in there. And once we get to the discussion portion, feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and we'll call on you in the order that those hands are raised. And just a reminder that the meeting is being recorded, and we will be posting a recording video on the project website afterwards. So if you miss anything or would like to share this presentation with anyone else that you might know, that'll be certainly available for you at that time. So before we jump into the presentation, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Matt Rodriguez. I'm with WSP, and we're the consulting firm that's working with the municipality on this project. And I'm here today with my colleague, Will, if you want to say hello.
Hi, everybody.
And Will's joining me today with the official plan review. And I'll pass it now over to Jen and Tim with the municipality. Jen.
Thanks, Matt. I just wanted to say welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time out of your evening to attend these sessions. From my perspective, these are really important sessions to get some feedback from the public on where we want to go with our land use planning in our community. So my name is Jennifer Huff. I'm the Director of Building and Planning, and I'm on a team that's assisting in the management of this project. Here today, I do want to mention that there are a number of council members attending this session. So thank you also for attending those. And also tonight is Tim Williams, and I'll turn it over to Tim to introduce himself as well.
Thank you. Yes, Tim Williams, Senior Planner with the County of Middlesex, but do primarily land use planning work in Strathroy. Excited to hear what people have to say this evening about where we're at and on some of the issues that we'd like to talk about this evening. So I've got my listening ears on. You probably won't hear me talk much, but that's the best way I think we can learn things is by listening tonight. So thank you very much, and looking forward to the next hour and a half or so.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tim and Jen. Really appreciate that as we get started. And so we have a presentation, and then we want to have a conversation. We want to see what your thoughts are. We want to see what do you think about what we're proposing and where we're going. And so just a brief overview and agenda for this evening. We'll provide an update on the project. Again, for those who have been following this project since the beginning, certainly a lot has been done and still a lot to go. We're then going to have sort of an overview presentation of what we're calling preliminary policy directions. And this is really where we're going from that land use planning perspective. And so in previous open houses, we've spoken specifically about different topics like trails, transportation, and housing. But here we're speaking about all of them sort of together from a land use planning perspective. As I mentioned, we do want to have a conversation. So I have some specific questions that we'll run by the group and would love your feedback, your comments, and honest thoughts as we go forward. We'll then outline some next steps in the process and where we're headed. Again, this is an opportunity to present those preliminary directions. And these are really strategic things that we need to do to update the official plan. And we need your feedback and input on these as we go forward. So on your screen in a second, there will be a quick little poll. And so we just want to learn about how we want to know about how you learned about today's virtual community conversation. And so I think there's 6 options on your screen: email, social media, newspaper or print ad, radio ad, word of mouth, and other. And if you do select other, would love to know what that's about. And you can pop that answer in the chat box. There was certainly quite a bit of communications that went out about this evening's session, and it's always helpful to understand where perhaps the majority of people learned about things. Okay, so I'll give everyone a few moments to submit their answers. All righty. Perfect. So all right, so it looks like the majority of folks learned about this via email. Certainly a few emails went out, as well as social media. And so certainly those are 2 key ways that we want to get the word out, but always curious to learn about where folks are hearing about things. Thank you for participating in that, appreciate it. So now we'll jump into the presentation proper. This project got started about a year ago, and it's going to be completed over about 2 years. And we're planning for the future over the next 25 years plus. The project is called Growing Together Strathroy-Caradoc, and that's sort of the umbrella and the overarching term and name for the project. And under that umbrella, we're completing 8 master plans and studies. And we're doing this to guide infrastructure and budget decisions, maintain or enhance quality of life, and inform new policies for the official plan. And that's that key piece of why we're here today. As part of this project, we're completing 8 master plans and studies, including a commercial systems study, a transportation master plan, an attainable housing study, a servicing capacity and constraint study, recreational trails master plan, an employment land study, a parks and recreation master plan, and a fire station location study. All of that is feeding into our official plan review. And so those outcomes are all being woven into the proposed policy directions for the official plan. And the official plan is really the key tool that the municipality has to direct and guide growth and development and manage change over the next 25 years. And so it really is a critical tool the municipality has, and it's being informed by all of this work to make sure that we're comprehensively planning for the future. So why is the municipality reviewing its official plan? The current official plan was adopted by council in 2006, so perhaps it's a bit out of date. Under the Ontario Planning Act, we are required to update the official plan, and so there is a legislative requirement for the municipality to update and review the official plan. There are also a number of key provincial and county policy documents that the municipality needs to conform to. And so there's a county official plan as well as the provincial policy statement as two key documents, and they really drive some of the main updates that happen in the Strathroy-Caradoc official plan. As I mentioned before, official plan policies will be informed by other master plans and studies to ensure that a coordinated and comprehensive plan is in place. So this is an opportunity to take a look at all the elements that make up sort of city building and community building, and consider them in the official plan. And so this is a really exciting opportunity for the municipality. So just to provide a snapshot of where we're at in all of these processes, there's certainly a lot of moving parts, and wanted to provide a bit of a snapshot. So starting at the top, as I mentioned, we're here today talking about the official plan review. And so we've been chipping away at that over the past year, and that'll continue into 2022 with what's called the Municipal Comprehensive Review. And so there's a number of elements to that project, and we're here today speaking about the policy directions report. The Transportation Master Plan, a draft of that is under review by some municipal staff, and we look forward to sharing that with the public soon. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan, a new draft, the first draft of that is now available online. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, the Parks and Recreation, Master Plan is now available for review and comment. We're still awaiting some final pieces on the Recreational Trails Master Plan and the Servicing Capacity and Constraint Study, so stay tuned for more information there. The Attainable Housing Study has been completed for a little bit now, and that final report is available online. And that looks at different options to get new affordable and attainable housing built in the community. Two other studies are also under review by the municipality right now, the Regional Commercial Systems Study and the Employment Land Study, and we look forward to sharing those with you in the coming weeks. The Fire Station Location Study has recently been posted online, and I believe is going to council early in December for consideration. And this actually identifies the need for a future fire station, and that report is available online as well as the municipality's council agendas. So a ton of information out there and still under development, but we wanted to provide a bit of a snapshot of where we're at in the process. So I spoke on that top row about the official plan review, and we wanted to unpack that a little bit more to understand what that process is and where we are. So back in the spring, early summer of this year, we completed a background review report, and that's been available online for a little bit now. And it really identifies preliminary gaps and key inputs that need to be considered in the official plan. As I mentioned, we've obviously been completing the master plans and studies as we go, and those provide strategic recommendations on various topics. So for example, the Transportation Master Plan provides recommendations on how we can build better streets for people, promote active transportation, for example, and plan for the future of mobility. We're here today talking about the policy directions and conformity report, and this is really our basis or our user guide for how we're going to update the official plan. And so we treat this document like a bit of a roadmap and a bit of a tool for us as we go to update the official plan. In the coming weeks, and to some degree already started, we'll be preparing the redlined official plan. And so what that means is we take the official plan as it is today, and we implement the changes, and we update all the wording, we number sections, we move things around, and we show it as a red line. So this is where we were, and this is where we're going. No decision at that point is made until an official plan amendment is brought forward to council. And so this is sort of a key demonstration for the community, for staff, for council to understand what key policies are changing. And so we'll be getting to that by the end of this year, and hope to have more information in the coming months on that key deliverable. So this year has been certainly busy in terms of community engagement and making sure we're getting the word out about this process. So we've obviously had to adapt over the past year to evolving public health directions, and have, I would say, successfully engaged the community in a virtual setting. And so we've done that through sort of 3 rounds of engagement. Back in the early spring, we completed round 1 where we set the vision. So we held 3 visioning workshops and a visioning survey. In round 2, we held 3 more public open houses over the summer. And over the past year, since the project began, we've held 3 meetings with our technical advisory committee. So those are those technical agencies like conservation authorities and school boards, as well as our stakeholder advisory committee. And that includes community members who applied to join, as well as some key agencies and community groups like service clubs, who bring a great perspective and have been a soundboard for us as we've advanced through the process. Right now, we're in round 3, and we just want to understand, did we get it right? Did we listen properly? Did we hear what the community's concerns and desires were? And so this is a really critical round of engagement for us as we move forward through the process. All right, so that sort of, let me just make sure we're good there. That wraps up the sort of overview. And so we wanted to provide where we were, the process that we followed to date, and now we want to know where we're going. And so the next slides, and we'll go through them in order, obviously, but really trying to present those preliminary policy directions and where we're going with the official plan. After that, we'll have an opportunity for some specific questions we have, as well as an open discussion with all of you. All right, so jumping right in, and these have been grouped somewhat thematically on the official plan review. And so over the past year, we've heard some key themes, and we have generalized them just to and then synthesize where there were commonalities. So some of the key things we've heard are preserving the agricultural base, offer new housing options, reduce sprawl, outward urban growth, build on the strong sense of community, and that sustainability is important. So those are some key things that we heard over the past year. And so where are we going? One of the key things that we need to do is implement what's called a natural heritage system, and that will protect natural areas and linkages such as woodlands, wetlands, and other significant features that have been identified, and making sure that we have strong policies in place for their protection. We also have an opportunity and the need, quite frankly, to introduce policies that help the municipality respond to a changing climate. So thinking about how perhaps we manage stormwater or planning for energy systems and the like. Looking out to the rural areas of the municipality, we need to support the long-term viability of farm operations through on-farm diversification and agritourism. And so when we say the terms on-farm diversification, we say things that are sort of small secondary businesses on a farm that either perhaps supplement a farmer's income or support the viability of a farming operation. Agritourism are those uses that are sort of secondary to a farm that encourages folks to visit the rural area and perhaps spend some time on the farm. We also want to ensure that planning documents are user-friendly. There's often a lot of jargon, a lot of technical terms and words, and there's a need to promote access and understanding of all these different plans and master plans. And so we want to make sure we have some policies in place and improve the overall usability of the document. Okay, another key aspect that we need to look at through this official plan review is growth. And so the County of Middlesex assigns population and household growth projections for all local municipalities. By 2046, Strathroy-Caradoc is forecasted to be home to about 13,700 additional residents. And by 2046, expected to accommodate about 6,900 new homes. And so that's a significant amount of growth that we need to accommodate while achieving other goals and principles such as strong neighborhoods, protecting agriculture and the like. So how are we going to do that and where are we going? We want to permit more units on a lot in our neighborhoods. So thinking about permitting triplexes, secondary suites, so that could be maybe a basement apartment or on the upper floor of a house. Garden suites, so those are the temporary, sometimes called granny flats, temporary perhaps structures in the backyard or elsewhere on the property, subject to some criteria that help increase some housing options in our neighborhoods. We also want to continue to permit medium and high density development subject to criteria. So the official plan already permits medium and high density development subject to criteria, and we want to carry that forward, but refine it a little bit and provide a bit more clarity about what that means. And so when we say medium density, we're thinking about townhomes and stacked townhomes and maybe even walk-up apartments. And when we're saying high density development, we're thinking about, typically things that a simple way of thinking about it is things that maybe need an elevator. So, 4 or 6-story buildings, but we want to continue to permit that and provide that criteria to shape and inform where they go. We also want to support new development in downtown Strathroy. We certainly want to protect important, heritage elements and other, significant buildings, but there might be an opportunity as places redevelop to, increase more housing options and both revitalize downtown and provide housing across the community. Another key direction where we want to go is to identify new mixed-use corridors where intensification can occur. And so when we say mixed-use corridors, think about perhaps a small building with a commercial shop or maybe a clinic on the ground floor, and then a few stories of residential units perhaps above. And so that's what we mean by mixed use here. And those might not be appropriate in every location in the municipality, but they might be appropriate on key corridors, so key roads, key corridors that connect different important destinations. So whether it's downtown to main commercial centers, for example, that might be a place where we want to promote intensification. And this mixed-use corridor would be what is a new designation. And so this would be a new thing that we'd be introducing into the official plan. And so we'd love your thoughts and feedback on that, as well as any thoughts on maybe where that could go. Where are those appropriate locations for mixed-use corridors? So the image on your left, or images, I should say, are two maps, one of Strathroy and one of Mount Bridges. And those yellow areas that you see on your screen are residential areas. And so in the official plan, those areas are designated for residential development. Quite likely that a number of folks on this call live in one of those yellow areas, and it permits a wide range of residential uses and some limited secondary uses. Through this official plan, one of the things that we want to do is rename that to neighborhoods. So renaming that instead of residential areas to neighborhoods. And we want to do that to be a bit more flexible and adaptable. If we've learned anything this past almost 2 years now, which is scary to say, we've learned that where we live is so much more than our home. It's parks, it's providing close access to shops and services. It's providing opportunities to get outside and be active in our community, but providing options, other options beyond just houses. And so by calling it a neighborhood, we want to be a bit more flexible in terms of what is permitted, but also not changing the that recognizing that obviously these areas are primarily used for dwellings and where people live. Another key thing we want to do is be consistent between Strathroy and Mount Bridges. So right now there's sort of two different frameworks that apply to each community, and there is an opportunity here to establish a new direction forward and be consistent, but also recognizing that there's a unique character for each community. So, they aren't the same, but there is that opportunity for the community or for the municipality rather, to be a bit more consistent, just to make it easier. So if folks want to know, what's permitted where, there is a bit of consistency across the community. And as I mentioned before, we want to ensure that neighborhoods are great places to live, work, play, go to school, and shop. And so certainly want to have these principles in the official plan and think about that as we plan for the future. All right, so we want to move on now to housing. And so that was the official plan review. And this slide and the subsequent slides summarize some of the key things that have come out of the master plans and studies that we mentioned on some of the earlier slides. So through the attainable housing study, we heard some key things. We want to provide a range of housing choice. We want to be fiscally responsible and provide housing options at all life stages, including families, young professionals, and seniors, and everyone in between. So to help achieve that and perhaps address some of those things, those key things that we heard through the official plan and through other municipal planning tools, we want to note a stronger commitment to affordable housing. And this could include considering the sale or lease of surplus municipal properties, or prioritizing affordable housing when that occurs, allowing for a broader range of housing types in neighborhoods. And so I spoke about that on one of the earlier slides. We want to promote different styles of housing for different tenures, different levels of ownership, and different life stages. And so, that could be a single detached dwelling, that could be a duplex, could be a little triplex, or even the little backyard suite. We want to establish a target for new rental housing. And so as new housing comes online, it is desirable to see a certain percentage of that be rental housing to help accommodate that segment of the market. And the report, the Attainable Housing Study, recommends about 25% of new housing be rental. And so we got to look into that, see what that means and how we might implement that. We also want to protect against the conversion of existing rental housing. So if there is that existing rental housing, we don't want it to be converted into, say, a condominium, where oftentimes the prices go up and removes it from that sort of affordable or attainable housing supply. Through our planning tools, both through the official plan and in the future through the zoning bylaw, we want to eliminate barriers to innovative housing forms. And so when we say innovative housing forms, thinking about maybe tiny homes or little modular homes and thinking about where the most appropriate locations for those, both within a community and on a specific lot. And so we want to eliminate barriers, but also have some rules in place for those types of uses. So as I mentioned, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan just recently got posted online. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, I do encourage you to do so. Through that process, we heard that there was a strong desire to protect parkland, that there was strong support for more recreation programs and facilities for seniors, and concerns over lack of parks and recreation facilities in Mount Bridges. And so through the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, there's a number of recommendations here. I think there was 30 recommendations maybe. So these 4 bullets are really just a snapshot of that report, and I do encourage you to read that. One of the key things we want to do is update the municipality's parkland classification system to a new hierarchy. And so what this means is, when you go around the community, you might have a little park where there's a jungle gym, and that might be your neighborhood park. A community park are sort of those larger facilities, maybe where there's soccer games or community events. And then there's major parks where there's perhaps events, some more amenities, perhaps a washroom, for example. And so there's different tiers of parks, and we want to reflect that and update it just to make sure it's current and sort of aligns with best practices and the needs of the municipality. Another key direction is that we want to create one set of policies for parks, open space, and community facilities that covers the entire municipality. And so right now there's a bit of a difference between the policies that apply in Mount Bridges, Strathroy, and the rural area. And so we really want to harmonize that and create one set of parks, open space, and community facilities that addresses the entire municipality, again, but also recognizing the unique needs of each area of the community. On the more technical side, we want to align the official plan with Ontario's Planning Act in terms of parkland dedication and consider an alternate parkland dedication rate. And so what we mean by that is that in the official plan, there are requirements for developers to provide parkland through new development and minimum amounts of parkland. And so there's an opportunity to look at those rates, make sure that they're, again, in line with best practices, but also the parkland needs of the community. Another key outcome of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and somewhat in response to some of the lessons learned over the past 2 years, is that there's a renewed focus on outdoor parks and recreation facilities. So really trying to recognize that our outdoor spaces are vital. I never thought I'd be I went to a movie in a park in early November. Never would have thought that that would have happened before. And so there's certainly a renewed emphasis on those outdoor spaces in our community. Bear with me 1 second while I just have a swig of water. Okay. So looking to the Transportation Master Plan. And so as I said, this is still in the works, but we do have some preliminary recommendations from the master plan that we can share today. So what we've heard over the past year, both from the community and council and stakeholders, is a really broad support for safe cycling and walking connections. We also need to plan for the future of growth and mobility. So new trends, where are those growth areas happening, and how do we make sure people can get around? And we also want to reduce dependency on single occupancy vehicles. So this doesn't mean, everyone's getting rid of their car, but is there an opportunity to complete a short trip within the community without driving somewhere? Or maybe you can carpool some places, and thinking about how that's possible from a land use perspective. So where we want to go from that? We want to plan for streets that prioritize all road users. And so and when we say all road users, we want to prioritize those who are sort of most vulnerable, pedestrians and cyclists, And then, transit users, and obviously you want to accommodate freight and goods movement, and then sort of the car. And in that hierarchy, you're able to plan for streets that prioritize the needs of each, but also recognize that there's different needs and safety requirements for each user. We also want to ensure that new roads in the urban areas have sidewalks and cycling facilities where possible in both the urban and rural areas. And so through the transportation master plan, there will be a network of cycling facilities, and the county's also doing quite a bit of work in their cycling master plan. And so, ideally we want to have a network of cycling facilities that bring people both to the municipality, through the municipality, and everywhere in between. We also want to support the uptake of electric vehicles, including charging infrastructure and micro-mobility. So I'll get into that term next, but we want to think about, are there barriers to having charging infrastructure? Are we encouraging new development to have perhaps rough-ins or different things in place so that there's the opportunity for future charging infrastructure? And then when we say micro-mobility, you might have seen people go around on scooters or other types of technology that help them complete those short trips within town, and might help reduce the need for those single occupancy vehicles. Another key recommendation of the transportation master plan so far is that the municipality to undertake a detailed transit feasibility study and consider on-demand transit first. And so as you may be aware, there is a pilot project for transit going on right now in the community that connects some other communities nearby. But there really is, given the growth that's occurring, there is an opportunity to undertake a detailed study to understand what model and what kind of system works best for Strathroy-Caradoc. And so they're recommending at first what's called on-demand transit. So that's where you might call to schedule a ride, or it might pick up multiple people on a route. But it wouldn't be sort of that fixed service that you might see in other cities like London. Another key recommendation coming out of the transportation master plan is that no road widenings are proposed for vehicular traffic lanes. And so, thinking about the need of land and the cost of those road widenings, this is a key recommendation and is based on modeling that was completed. And so, this will be certainly an important master plan, and we look forward to getting some more comments and sharing that plan with you once it's available. The next two studies are a bit unique and pretty interesting. And so the first one speaks to commercial systems. And so when we talk about commercial systems, we think about, this covers everything from shops, in the picture here, we have malls, standalone stores, and perhaps those more like highway commercial uses like dealerships and little restaurants. So this report, which again we'll be sharing shortly, identifies specific new areas or encourages the municipality to identify specific new areas intended for mixed-use development in both Strathroy and Mount Bridges. It encourages to protect commercial areas and retail space, to protect the unique function of downtown Strathroy in the community while still allowing for more small-scale retail outside of the downtown. And so currently there's a limit on, there's currently a limitation right now on, how small retail can be outside of downtown. And the intention of that is to help protect those downtown businesses, but there is an opportunity to balance those needs and permit some small scale retail elsewhere while still protecting downtown. The study also looks at allowing for a gradual transition of the Kenwick Mall site. And so it doesn't assume that anything's going to happen tomorrow, but should something happen, or the owner wants to change, or change something on the lot, there might be an opportunity to add some more housing units, add some more shops, and transition that site over time. And so that's not saying something's going to happen tomorrow, but we want to consider what happens if that takes place. Finally, it does recommend that there are some key commercial areas in Mount Bridges that need to be protected to make sure that there's adequate retail and shopping spaces in the community for both the current and future residents. And last, but certainly not least, is the employment land study. And so this study looks at those, what you might call industrial lands, or business parks, for example. That all covers employment lands. And so this study recommends protecting existing employment areas from incompatible land uses. So we really don't want to see shopping plazas in industrial areas, for example. It also suggests to consider expanding the Molnar Industrial Park to accommodate future jobs. And so, where that happens and where that goes, that TBD. But there is that recommendation to consider expanding that to encourage new employment development. It also supports the intensification of existing employment areas. So adding more jobs or making better use of existing land that we have for employment uses. It also does a pretty deep dive into the changing economic landscape, both sort of at a regional level and a local level. And it recognizes the shift in the economic landscape from traditional industries, so those traditional industrial uses, such as manufacturing, to more knowledge-based industries. And so thinking about how we need to plan for that. Lastly, but certainly not least, it establishes a framework for the conversion of employment lands. And so, for example, if someone owned lands that are designated commercial in the official plan, they need to go through a process in order to convert it. And because it's not desirable to remove employment lands from the stock or the employment land stock without considering a number of other factors. And so there is a series of conversion criteria that are established by the employment land study. So take a breath here. Those past slides covered all of the different topics that we've been looking at through that policy directions report, as well as the master plans and studies. So just give us a second and then we'll jump right into this conversation. As I said, have some great questions and then we'll open it up for a general Q&A. A few people have been popping comments and questions in the chat box so far, which is great to see. Alrighty. All right, so how this is going to work is we're going to go through a series of about 5 or 6 questions, and it's going to start first with a poll. So we did one of those at the beginning, and then if you select yes, generally speaking, I'd love for you to provide a bit more detail in the chat box. And so there'll be sort of simple questions that you can are yes or no or multiple choice, and then if you'd like to provide a bit more detail, you can use the chat box to do that. And so we'll give time for some folks on the first one to get settled. So I'll launch the poll in a moment. All right, so the first question that should be on your screen now is, the pandemic has changed what I use most in my neighborhood. And so that's sort of a yes or no. Give everyone a few seconds or a few minutes to get in there. And if you're saying yes, we'd love to know, if you have a comment or anything to add to that and what it's changed. And we'd appreciate if you can pop that in the chat box. And if you're looking for the chat box, it should either be at the top or the bottom of your screen. And there should be an icon there that says chat. And if you click that, you should be able to open the chat box. All right, so it looks like we have our critical mass here, about 18 folks. So almost a dead heat here. About 50% of people saying that yes, or 47% saying yes, it's changed, what I use most in my neighborhood. No, another 50% have said it hasn't changed anything. And so that's certainly fair. So some of the great comments that are coming in the chat box, some people, using walking trails for more daily versus more daily use versus weekend adventures, shopping at smaller stores, they can get in and out faster, using more parks and trails, not eating out as often, no longer commuting a far distance, so all errands are done locally in Strathroy. Take out and dine in, walking more, enjoying nature, more reliance and support of small local stores. That's really great to hear, and I think that aligns with some of the things that we're thinking about, but really helpful context as we try and think about how we plan for the future of our neighborhoods but also, unfortunately, future pandemics. Staying out of bigger cities. Yep, certainly staying close to home. Yeah, thanks so much for all of your comments here, everyone. All right, so we'll move on to the next question here. So the question is, or I guess, they're more statements than questions. There should be more options to travel within and to Strathroy-Caradoc without the need to drive alone. And so I'll launch that poll in a second here. Should be up on your screen now. And if yes, what options would you use? So we'd like to know, if there were some more options to get to and from and around, what options would you most likely use? All right, responses are coming in. Give everyone a few moments here to lock in your vote. All righty, give everyone a second here. All righty, so I think that hits our number here. So again, a bit of 50-50 tie here in terms of providing more options to get around without driving alone. And so some of the comments, perhaps on the yes side, are on-demand transit, trains, bike lanes and pathways, some kind of transit, whether it's micro transit or on-demand transit. A comment here about some of the work and some of the programs that are in place in Innisfil around using Uber for transit. Though anecdotally, it was a very successful program and almost too successful. It became quite costly once more people started taking the Ubers. And so I think they've had to pivot a little bit in terms of their model in Innisfil, but certainly a really cool example. A great taxi service. So certainly taxis play a role in the community, trains and bike lanes. Great. And so unfortunately, perhaps some limitations on what the municipality has in their jurisdiction around train service, but certainly an opportunity to support it and to continue to perhaps advocate for it as train service keeps improving. Thanks so much, everyone. All right, so the next question here, and I'm going to get better at sequencing here, is when thinking about providing more housing choice in our neighborhoods, what scale and height fits best? And so there's 4 options on your screen, A, B, C, D. And so A is sort of like a 1-story coach house. It might be something in the backyard, little house in the backyard. B might be a unit above a garage, and so it might be beside the house, behind the house. More units within a sort of a single detached form. And so that image there is 2 units that essentially look like a single detached dwelling. And D are what are called quadplexes and sixplexes. And if you see the image here, it for the most part looks like a single detached dwelling from the front, save and except that it has a few more doors. But from a size perspective, and from when you're on the street, it largely looks like a single detached dwelling and provides sort of a significant amount of more housing on the same amount of lot. And so some really cool, varied responses coming in here. Someone here says all of the above. I should have put in all of the above option. So certainly, lots of different details to think about in terms of, making sure that we're there's adequate parking, for example, and not covering the lot too much. But in sort of principle at the sort of high level, really interesting to see. And so, okay, I'm going to share the results because I think they're pretty interesting. So broad support for quadplexes and sixplexes, which is which is great. Single detached form comes in second. And so again, those are, houses that look, just like a sort of a single detached dwelling, but have a bit more units. And then coach houses above a garage, and the least supported being the one-story coach house. So some great comments coming in the chat box here. So 4 to 6 unit housing to help more people afford housing for sure. For seniors, small housing like tiny homes with no stairs, certainly, and that's a really interesting and great consideration. Thinking about the typical comment here that the typical expectation of a house with a large backyard needs to change. So we might not need as much of that yard. Flexibility with secondary units to create more density. Considering all of these ideas, again, I should have put all of the above. A comment here that Seattle had a great program launched with tiny homes and backyards. And it was, welcome to address some of their housing issues in the community. All of the above. All right, I duly noted. Semi-detached allows for families to stay together and support each other. No, this is really great, and this is really helpful input. And I don't think our intention is per se to limit, what is possible, but we want to think about some of those criteria. Think about what some of those, what serves the needs of Strathroy-Caradoc best. And so this is really helpful input as we think about, how we can make better use of land within our existing neighborhoods. So really appreciate everyone's thoughts and comments there. Okay, so our second last question, or statement rather, developing sustainable communities is an important objective for Strathroy-Caradoc. And so we want to understand, what does sustainability mean to you? When you think of that word, what does that mean in your day-to-day? What does that mean in your neighborhood or your community? What can we think about through the official plan that might help achieve your vision for sustainability? So if you have any of those thoughts, we'd love to hear them, comments or questions as well in the chat box. Alrighty. So this was an easy one, I think. Clear cut, yes, sustainability is important. And I think, something that we need to consider as we update all policies within the plan. Thinking about applying that sustainability lens to, natural heritage protection, thinking about it, pardon me, as it relates to, building, new neighborhoods, for example, all of the above. So any thoughts in the chat box? I didn't see any come in just yet. Oh, they come in. People were writing many thoughts. Awesome. So we don't want to lose the idea of a warm and close community, but at the same time, we want to be accessible and everything here instead of going elsewhere. So I want to be able to meet those day-to-day needs locally. More use of green energy, solar, capture of rainwater, for example, incorporating mixed uses within development. So corner stores, moving towards net zero design and water conservation. All needs met within the community through housing, employment, services, and recreation. Sort of a response here back on the pandemic, thinking about how it's probably permanently changed the number of people who need to commute and have more time and requirement to be local and be nearby. A great question here. Thinking about the capacity of water and sewage drainage for added homes and commercial expansion. And that's exactly what the servicing capacity and constraint study is getting into right now. And so as soon as that's available, we'll be posting that online. And that'll really sort of explain, what are our limitations right now in Strathroy, Mount Bridges, the rural area, and what do we need to do to accommodate for future growth. Sustainability to this person means living, working, and playing all within the boundaries of the community without having to leave frequently to go to London or Sarnia, ensuring local businesses are profitable, affordable housing, utilities. These are some really great responses, everyone. Communities that recognize and cater to the social welfare and needs of everyone across the spectrum of population. All have to do our share to reduce carbon impact and adapt to climate change. A good comment here, finding Mount Bridges development has been too fast and in their opinion, not sustainable with the increase in traffic. So thinking about sustainability from different lenses, but there's other ways of viewing sustainability. Increasing the number of affordable and social housing units, and not isolating neighborhoods to one type of housing, but blending and building what is a term called complete communities. And so all those uses, everything that you might need on your day-to-day, different ranges of housing options, all within neighborhoods. Really great discussion here in the chat box, everyone. Alrighty. So our last question here is related to the rural area. And so mentioned on one of the first slides that we want to support on-farm diversified uses. So those are those secondary uses to a farm. And so we just want to know, should there be flexibility in terms of the types of on-farm diversified uses permitted secondary to a farm? And what uses would you support? You might have just heard about this term for the first time, but if you could think about going out into the rural area or the agricultural area, and you might want to visit a farm, or there might be an activity or an event on the farm. What types of things might you want to see on those farms? And there's obviously maybe limitations on certain types of uses, but there's certainly a lot of creative options that we can think of here. Alrighty. Give everyone a minute here. Alrighty. Looks like we've slowed down. All right. So overall, unsurprisingly, full support from this group, at least, in terms of the flexibility of types of on-farm diversified uses that we might think about, and would love to know just some of the things that you might be thinking about in terms of agriculture more broadly, supporting farms, and thinking about those perspectives. So one of the comments here is supporting the concept as long as it doesn't impede the commercial farmer. Certainly an important consideration. Farm gate sales, bed and breakfasts, agritourism. Might touch on some of those comments earlier about local travel and staying local. Thinking about requirements for avoiding good cropland. And so, maybe there's existing buildings that are on a property to be able to use those, perhaps less impactful than, paving over or building on farmland. And certainly we do plan on having some conversations with the agricultural community and more specifically, and we want to make sure that we're asking a broad range of questions at these more general discussions. Various activities to allow us to get out to the farm, bolster interaction between the farm and the city. Perhaps fostering a connection between the cities and the town to the rural area for folks to understand, a bit more about where their food comes from and develop that connection to where their food is grown. Certainly a great suggestion, and how it's raised. And for example, really great suggestions, everyone. Alrighty. Another great comment here. Yeah, permitting them within reason. but must be secondary or subsidiary to the agricultural operation. Farming, as a priority should be first, limiting the percent of land base or some other limiting factor to protect food production. And so typically, municipalities set out caps on the amount of the lot area that can be used for non-farm diversified use, and it's not a huge amount of land. It's typically sort of scaled to the size of the farm or a certain overall maximum. There's also you can get into the details about what is considered part of the on-farm diversified use. So for example, if they use a driveway or an existing building, is that calculated as part of the number? And so it's all a bit of a game of math and figuring out what's best and achieves the provincial policy as well as the county policy for these uses, as the province and the county set out some policies and requirements for on-farm diversified uses. So some great suggestions, and again, for sure, definitely want to speak to the agricultural community specifically about this topic and other key ag topics. Alrighty, so this wraps up the sort of polling and interactive element of this evening's open house. And so we're happy to open it up now to any questions that people might have. And so, didn't mean to do that. I'm also going to go just to the beginning of the chat box here to see if there's any questions. So first comment here, some support for the idea of renaming to neighborhoods. Appreciate that. There's a comment here about, or a question about the maps that we had shown. And so when we're thinking about these blue areas, these are institutional areas. And so if that's what you're referring to, that's what these areas mean on the map. And so a great question here about process. And so let me just pause here. So there's a question here about looking at growth boundary expansions beyond Strathroy or within Strathroy beyond the 3 proposed areas. So for those who might be familiar with this project, earlier this year, Council adopted an official plan amendment just to bring 3 areas of land that are in Strathroy and get them ready for more urban uses. And so they were either for one reason or another, they were in different designations or had some issues in terms of how they were recognized in the official plan. And so those issues were addressed through this official plan amendment. In 2022, we'll be looking at if there is a need for further expansion to accommodate growth to 2046. And so there's a process to follow for that work. It will be sort of not separate, but we'll be kicking off that project in the new year and updating the website with some more specific wording around that. As well as future opportunities to get involved. And so that's really driven by those forecasts for population and employment growth, as well as some of the changes that we're considering to, promote intensification in neighborhoods and trying to balance all of those needs to identify where and if future land might be needed in the urban areas, not just in Strathroy, but Mount Bridges as well. The whole both communities will be looked at through this study. In reference to 2046, where does data come from beyond the county? So unfortunately, I can't speak directly to all of the data sources, but the census definitely plays a key role in the historical data. The projections piece, some of that's modeling. There's assumptions that are built into that process. And I don't know if Tim has any additional comments to add to the modeling there.
Well, I just wanted to mention that it initially comes from the Ministry of Finance and their modeling numbers, which then flows to the county, which then flows into this process here. And so those were recently updated with the current government, and those are the numbers that we're working through and working with for this project.
Great. And so I guess there's a follow-up there as how relevant they are to the current housing market. Tim, do you have any thoughts on that?
The population increases are significantly greater in this most recent update in comparison to previous updates in terms of percentage increases year over year. So it is addressing the fact that there is a greater demand on housing, a greater population expectation in this area.
Thanks, Tim. Jen, perhaps a couple of follow-up, or Tim as well. A question here about when thinking about accommodating that growth, is there a plan towards a ratio between Strathroy and Mount Bridges, or how does that work between the communities?
Yeah, Matt, I can say that there's, in the past at least, been a historical 70-30 general split between growth happening in Strathroy compared to Mount Bridges. We're keeping an eye on what the population and housing trends are in order to determine if that is still a suitable assumption for where the growth will happen in the future.
Thanks, Jen. That's helpful. Yeah, and perhaps and some comments here suggesting the need to continue to recognize Mount Bridges as a unique community with a strong sense of community, and certainly something that we're taking into consideration as we think of all these different changes. There's a question here about what level of government the size of lot is dictated. Typically, that's through the municipality's zoning bylaw. So there's requirements for lot area, lot frontage. And so that's a separate document that the municipality administers. A really interesting comment here, and something that we definitely need to take away, is that when adding more density and intensification, strong urban design guidelines become even more important. So the new housing are welcome additions that enhance the community and ensure that quality architecture and building materials are used. And so I think that's a really great comment, and I think something that at least anecdotally or briefly Jen and I have talked about in thinking about how those policy directions, and are there urban design criteria that need to be established, or are there further guidelines that need to be made? Certainly something that we'll be considering as we go forward. And so perhaps, Jen, if you can provide a bit more clarity on the 70-30 split in terms of, is that based on personal interest or purchases, or is that sort of more of an administrative decision?
So I think it reflects the lands that are available for development currently. Many of you might know that for a long time there were no full municipal services in Mount Bridges, and so the municipality made a decision to bring full services to Mount Bridges along the Adelaide Road corridor, which essentially allowed for 2 development areas to open up. And when those development areas opened up, we did see some additional development happening in Mount Bridges, whereas there are generally a number of different development areas available in Strathroy right now and in the past. And so it's been where people have chosen to locate.
Thanks, Jen. And I might be tapping on you for the next question as well. And so speaking about Melbourne and admittedly it's something we haven't mentioned, Melbourne, today. And so in terms of what's planned for growth, it's not considered a primary settlement area or an urban settlement area. It's a hamlet area, and so there isn't a forecasted growth, a significant amount of forecasted growth for Melbourne over the plan. Jen, are you able to speak to maybe any infrastructure issues, or what the plan or the vision is for Melbourne?
Yeah, so currently Melbourne is not on full services. The water is provided by the adjacent municipality, Southwest Middlesex, and there's no municipal sanitary service. So at this time, I think, certainly there might be some opportunity for infill, but not to the same extent as the growth that we are anticipating and encouraging in fully serviced or at least partially serviced settlement areas like Strathroy or Mount Bridges.
Wonderful. And so, and there's a question here speaking about what the municipality can do to encourage affordable housing units. And so that's certainly a big question. And if anyone had the answer key to that, I think we'd be in great shape. But there's certainly a lot of different tools at a municipality's disposal. And the attainable housing study does get into some of those. in terms of programs for housing, advocating for funding, thinking about providing more options. Jen, do you have is there anything on top of your mind in terms of what the municipality can do?
Yeah, Matt. So, I mean, certainly the policies that we're proposing to introduce into this new official plan are intended to encourage more affordable housing. But in terms of how can we even more directly incentivize affordable housing, the first thing that we have done in the more recent past is last year update our community improvement plan, specifically to update and provide 3 new incentive programs that will give money to projects that introduce affordable housing, rental housing in the downtown or in general areas of Strathroy Mount Bridges, or as well, when Matt was speaking earlier about smaller secondary suites or granny flats, so to speak, or coach houses. We also have money available to people who are looking at introducing those onto their property. And we are fortunate right now that currently the zoning does allow for both a single detached dwelling and a secondary suite currently as a right in most residential zones. In fact, we actually updated the zoning bylaw not too long ago to expand that permission to not just one particular category of residential zone, but several. So we're trying to do what we can. There's certainly lots of other things that I anticipate we're going to be doing, in the future based on some of the work that's coming out of this project. But that was our kind of the easy thing that we felt we could do pretty quickly by introducing new programs through the CIP.
Awesome. Certainly, yeah, certainly lots of tools at the municipality's disposal, and it's certainly an all hands on deck effort between the county and housing providers, the province, and federal government to some degree as well, to both encourage and build affordable housing. And so there's a suggestion here speaking about requiring builders to designate a set number of units to be affordable. And so there are some limitations on that tool, but we can think about other targets and encourage the development of affordable housing units within new developments. Okay, some comments here just about not clustering affordable housing and sort of allowing it to happen broadly across the community, and I think that's certainly our intention, is to provide those opportunities across Strathroy-Caradoc. Their thought about planting more trees and thinking about maintaining that the urban forest and the tree canopy, and certainly something we can certainly something that can be spoken to in the official plan as a principle, thinking about maintaining tree cover. And we spoke earlier about the natural heritage system, and so making sure that we're protecting all sizes of woodlands, anything that's been identified, and protecting those from sort of clear cutting or getting cut down. And so there's another question here about speaking about addressing homelessness and finding housing for those who are experiencing homelessness. Jen, I don't know if you're able to speak to any programs that are offered in the municipality, or anything that's going on with respect directly to homelessness.
So I think it came through in our attainable housing study that is a priority. Certainly we know that without a study that in the community, we do have some space available for women, but nothing for men. And they are, it's difficult to find a place for them. So it is certainly something that we as a municipality are talking about. We are also talking and encouraging the county to come on perhaps as partners with us to some sort of a shared solution. But, I don't have a magic bullet at this point in time, unfortunately.
Nope. Duly noted, but certainly something that's on everyone's radar, and is certainly top of mind. Thanks everyone so much so far for the questions. I don't see any more coming in, but we're not wrapping up. I just want to go over some next steps before we oh, there were some more. Oh, okay. So thinking, there's a question here speaking about sort of institutional uses like places of worship and community gathering spaces. And so, typically official plans don't identify, the need for places of worship or other spiritual places, but certainly can permit and continue to permit them. And I think part of the intention of the renaming it to neighborhoods is to recognize that, all those uses happen within neighborhoods most typically, and are certainly important community spaces. That a bit of a question from Councillor Brennan about declaring a climate emergency. And I think, admittedly, if you control find through the official plan right now, the word of climate change is not used in the official plan. And so I think we really need to introduce that term into the official plan. And I think perhaps council and staff can think about the need for that declaration as we think about implementing changes and the urgency of the issue. Jen, I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
No, it's a point well taken. Certainly that is something that is missing currently from our policies right now. Something that we as staff are looking at, and any funding opportunities to get, for instance, something like a climate action plan for the municipality in place is, I think this is one project, and that's something else that we can look at. And obviously they are tied together. But I would leave it to council to make those suggestions and provide some direction to staff and go from there.
I think one thing we had spoken about, or that is, coming up in the report is, encouraging that type of planning to happen, and identifying those key actions that need to be taken with respect to this topic and issue. Thanks so much, everyone. Alrighty, so just want to provide sort of an overview of next steps and how you can stay in touch through this process. We provided quite a bit of information this evening and a number of updates, but don't worry, everything is sort of on one centralized location that if you need to go back and find something, it really is all there. So where we're going. So from today's conversation, we will be revising the draft policy directions and conformity report. And so that report is available online on the website. And we encourage you to head to the homepage, review that report, and we'd welcome your comments and feedback. We'll be finalizing the master plans and studies based on all of this input received, as well as some input received from the Technical Advisory Committee and Stakeholder Advisory Committee. And then our plan is to present the draft policy directions conformity report and some of the master plans and studies as they come and are available to municipal council for either endorsement, approval, or adoption. And so we'll be going to council as those reports are ready, and seeking that direction and again, continuing the conversation, getting input from council, members of the public, and anyone else interested in the process. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be preparing the redlined official plan as sort of our next main deliverable for the project, and that will really show how the official plan will change. And so we did speak to some very specific things today, but we also spoke to opportunities and the need to do something. The official plan will sort of spell, or the redline official plan rather, will spell out those changes and how they've been implemented, and will be available for consultation. So how to participate both after the meeting or at any time. As I mentioned, you can review the official plan policy conformity and directions report on the homepage. You can review and provide comments on the various master plans and studies as they're released. So far, we have the attainable housing study and the Parks and Recreation master plan available for review. At any time, you can go to the homepage. We update it quite frequently with the latest information and updates. You can also email the municipality with any comments or questions that you have at any time. And the email for that is officialplan@strathroy-caradoc.ca. And then on that homepage, on the Growing Together sc.ca website, you can register to receive project updates and stay involved. And so a number of people here suggested that they found out about this project through email, and there were certainly a couple of emails that went out to those who registered to let them know that this event was happening this evening. So certainly lots of opportunities as we sort of round out 2021, which is quite scary to say. And we'll be updating the website with the latest information, as I mentioned, as we go forward. So stay tuned for more information in 2022. I can't say the year for some reason today. And so next year, stay tuned for more information as we think about the up next meetings and other opportunities to get involved. And so before we wrap up, there's a comment here. Oh, a great question that is quite near and dear to my heart is how has a school board participated in this process, and what can the school board do better going forward? So the school board representatives are on our technical advisory committee group. And so we actually had, I think, 3 or 4 of them from the school board at our most recent meeting. So they're certainly apprised of the process and providing comments where they need to on where we're going. They're very supportive actually of the updating the residential designation to neighborhoods and making sure that there's sort of more flexible permissions in place for school boards so that, as larger developments or new developments come online, they're able to plan, and there's perhaps a little bit less of a barrier to implementation of schools in neighborhoods. So hopefully that helps. They're certainly dialed in as well at the county level, understanding population forecasting and how that impacts their work, their forecasting, and their process. So great question. But we certainly want to keep them involved in the process, and they'll be reviewing everything that we release or going forward as well. All right, so I don't see any questions. Any other, before we wrap up, the website here is growingtogethersc.ca. If you have any comments or questions, certainly welcome to stick around, and the project team will be here till 7:30. But otherwise, again, we really appreciate you taking the time this evening to join us. This is a great discussion. Got my mind going at least on some things that we need to think about. And we'll be summarizing all of this feedback in the final iteration of the policy directions report. So we really want to make sure we're capturing all of that. And thank you again for contributing to this project. We really, really appreciate it. Have a great evening, everyone.